Damon Martin here with MMA Fighting, and his UFC 252 fast approaches in August. We're going to talk right now to one of the participants in that highly anticipated heavyweight title fight trilogy, Daniel Cormier.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How's everything with you?
Good, man. Just long morning. Long morning. I had like massage and therapy, and then I went and ran on one of those Ultra G treadmills, and now I'm just getting home. So real long morning.
Oh, well, I appreciate you taking the time for me as always.
No problem, brother. No problem.
So, I'm good, man. I'm good. Obviously, I'm excited. I know it's been a long time coming with the fight getting scheduled finally in August, man. It's like a weight off the mind that we finally got this date and everything's set now.
Yeah, I think it's necessary for us to fight, and put this thing to bed. Stipe and I are two guys that have done a ton in the sport, and it was very important for us to fight this third fight so this rivalry doesn't end at 1-1.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there, I know that, the fight schedule now, so I don't want to look too much in the past, but was there ever a moment where you're sitting there thinking to yourself, man, like, the frustration started to boil over, or you just like, because, I understand it, we're in the middle of a pandemic, obviously everything going on, it's kind of a weird time, but I know it had to get frustrating because it was coming up on, basically now it's going to be almost exactly 1 year since the last fight.
There was frustration, but, man, I always think when I was frustrated as to trying to get the fight scheduled, I kind of thought back to last year, and what he went through. I'm sure there were times where he was very frustrated with why we weren't scheduled and why it was taking so long and why this was this and this was the other, So I'm sure he had frustration, so you just deal with it. Things don't always go according to plan, So, it's nice to get the fight scheduled, but yeah, that was some frustration. But I always try to think in terms of like, I dealt with this, he dealt with it. It's no different.
Yeah. I remember talking to you and Stipe on the day the first fight was announced and you guys were doing the Ultimate Fight. I remember talking to you and him both, and both of you were very friendly about it. You actually talked to each other as you were signing the contracts. There was a lot of joking around, but you guys seemed like you were friendly. Then you did the reality show, and then the first fight happened, and it seemed like afterwards things got a little chippier, and I understand that's going to happen. You knocked him out and you took his title. That's part of it. And then leading up here, I'm not saying things got personal, but things got a little chippier. Have you felt that with Stipe? Is that just the natural business of when you fight a guy twice and there's just that natural built-in rivalry? Because it seems like you guys went from being kind of like, almost like buddies to like now there actually is a little bit of a rivalry here.
Well, I think anytime you fight somebody 3 times, you can't expect the relationship to stay the same. I think that's what I learned in this instance. We're going on fight number 3. If our relationship stayed the same, that's absurd. You can't share an octagon with a person 2 times and think that things won't change a little bit. So I feel like it's different, but I can't imagine how it wouldn't be. That's where I am with this whole. Well, are you and Stipe still as friendly as you were? It's like, well, no. But how could you expect us to be as friendly whenever we've fought 2 times?
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been in the octagon now for 25 minutes, essentially. This relationship isn't what it was back then.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is one of those things where years from now, when it's all said and done, I'm sure you guys will look back on this rivalry, no matter how it plays out, and look back with that fondness. I'm sure you could do that with some of your college wrestling opponents and some of your Olympic wrestling opponents. Like that's how competition is competition. You can look back years from now, and I'm sure you guys can be friendly about it.
Yes, for sure.
Now,
for sure. I believe that that's the type of. I believe that's the type of. I think that's what this rivalry will be known for, opposed to some of my other rivalries. Like this one can be based in a lot of different things, competitiveness, and even though it's bad in the moment, it can go back, if not exactly to what it was before. It can go back to some sort of normalcy and some sort of, a respectful relationship.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I always joke with you when we talk now. I do my best. I never bring up the name John Jones for that reason, because you're not fighting him. You're not going to fight him. It's kind of pointless. But it's funny, right before we got on the phone, I saw an interview with him, and he talked about you. And that was like, he was just like, DC's an outstanding guy. He's a great father, great representative of the African-American community, a great commentator. Didn't say a bad word about you. And I was just like, I know you guys are never going to be friends, but there has to be a mutual respect between competitors like that at the end of the day. And I know you're never going to be best friends with John Jones, nor would I expect it to be, but even that, like, there's that mutual respect. I feel like when you go to battle with a guy like that, no matter how much you like him or dislike him in the moment, there has to be a mutual respect when it's all said and done.
It's just the reality is, when you're in the octagon again, this guy I was in the octagon with for over 40 minutes, if you can't respect a person in that capacity when you've done that with them, then who can you respect? So, I do respect Jones in terms of what he does as an athlete, what he's been able to do, and all those things. But the reality is, like you said, it doesn't have to be a friendship, and it won't be. So, but yeah, I do respect him as a competitor. I never said I didn't. That's where it gets all confused. When they talk about this thing between him and I. It's like, I never not respected him as a competitor. It was just all the other stuff that I had problems with.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because every interview we ever did about it, you said, you're like, he is one of the greatest, if not the greatest one. Like, you always, in terms of fight skills, you always compliment the guy. It always kind of got lost in the messaging because there was such a rivalry, but you always, and you've never spoke badly in terms of his skills, never once.
No, I never did that, because if you're an honest guy, which I try to think I am, you tell the truth, and you can respect the person for their skills, and I respect those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, DC, obviously going into this one, a lot of the conversation, and we've already talked about this before, but a lot of the conversation is going to go into this being your final fight, this being your retirement fight. It's been a long time coming. I know you've kind of, you've known this coming, you've known this was happening, but where is your mind at with that, going into this fight? Like, do you put it out of your mind completely because you still got to focus on the fight? Do you allow that to motivate you, saying, I know this is the last one, I want to go out on top? Like, how do you do that? Because you're a very smart guy. I said that to you our first interview years ago. I said, man, one day you're going to be doing commentary, because the way you break things down is pretty incredible. So you understand all aspects of the sport, mental and physical. So how do you wrap your head around that going into this fight?
I just kind of think about it, but try not to put it at the forefront. When you start thinking about retirement as a whole, it's like easy for me, especially with the job that I have, to look to what's next. I just got an offer from ESPN to work, full time, not for the UFC, but for ESPN, the company. I haven't signed it yet, but we got an offer. I've gotten a ton of interest from the WWE and a lot of other things outside of mixed martial arts in the broadcast field. So that makes it very easy to look for what's next. So I try to stay in the moment, focus on what I'm doing right now, and hold on one second.
Sure.
Yeah, I just try to obviously it's there, but I want to try not to look forward to what comes next, because what comes next for me is not like most people. I've got a good job and a good future, and you never know. I expect the third part of my life. I think your life's in acts. Act 1 was me growing up in Louisiana, and Act 2 is wrestling, and then Act 3 is mixed martial arts. And I think Act 4 is going to be me spending time with my family and having a TV career. And I believe that act in my life may be, it may exceed everything I've done in sport. And when you have that to look forward to, you don't want it to be at the forefront. It becomes too comfortable and too comes to appealing.
Yeah. And, on the flip side of that, though, there's, talking about everyone saying this is your final fight and you want to go out on top, and that adds a certain level of pressure, but there's a flip side to that with Stipe, too, isn't there? Because if he loses this fight, he doesn't get another shot at you. We don't know what would happen to the heavyweight title at that point. When everyone talks about this being your retirement fight, there is a lot of pressure on him as well.
On both of us, I don't even think the pressure comes from retirement or anything. Or I think the pressure comes in what you just said. It's the third fight. It's the fight that ends the debate. There's a lot at stake in this fight. Not only the heavyweight championship of the world, but also whoever wins this fight is going to be remembered as the greatest heavyweight of this era and greatest heavyweight in UFC history. So. This is a big fight. This fight has massive stakes.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. Now, I've seen on Instagram and I saw on your ESPN show talking about, kind of getting back to your roots in preparation for this fight, getting back to your wrestling. I remember watching the interview you did a couple months ago on USA Wrestling where you were talking about kind of getting back to that. Can you kind of give me an idea, where that shift went in your head where you felt like you had to go back to that kind of grinding mentality, that wrestling mentality? I mean, it's something you've done your whole life, but you did kind of make it a point as far as why you wanted to do that going into this fight.
Well, I believe that in every fight, my biggest advantage will be in that area, right? I wrestled at the absolute highest level of the sport. And if I can't exploit that, then, I'm in trouble. And I think it wasn't as much a conscious decision as it was me being able to do it again. If you think for a second there was ever a time where I would have preferred not to had that grinding style of training camp, that's crazy. I just couldn't do it, Last time I was still, my back was still so messed up I could barely wrestle. I wrestled for a couple weeks leading into the fight. So when I took him down, that took so much damn energy because I hadn't done it. I was doing things that were so unfamiliar. Training camp last time was a lot of time spent boxing and just trying to push as much as I could in the boxing. So to be able to do everything again, it feels great.
Would you say in terms of health, in terms of your body, in terms of your preparation, would you say this is one of the best times you felt going into a training camp to get ready for a fight?
I think going into the training camp, there were still some little things, right? Soreness, being fatigued because I hadn't done anything. Carrying the extra weight from quarantine and carrying the extra quarantine weight. There were a number of things that weren't up to par. So I started early. I started training back in Jacksonville, which was, 6.5 weeks ago. I just started really early. So by the time this whole thing is done, it'll be over a 3-month training camp, I got ahead of it. But yeah, I feel good physically. I just love the fact that I can get in a wrestling stance and go hit shots and go wrestle, something that I couldn't do before. And that's very comforting in preparation.
Yeah. I was listening to your interview you did with Jim Rome, I think it was last week, and you were talking about, all the time you spent with Stipe in the cage. You've won the majority of that time. Outside of that fourth round in the second fight, you obviously knocked him out in the first round of the first fight, and then you won the first 3 rounds of the second fight. And you had dominated a lot of that fight until that fourth round of the rematch. So I could understand if you fell in love with the striking and said you're just going to go out there and want to strike with him. But you're telling him ahead of time, the Curtis Blades quote, you're like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to wrestle. But do you feel like that is smart? Or do you feel like, in terms of your preparation, you want to be able to mix that things into things you didn't do before? Because you did, in a large way, outstrike him for almost the entire fight.
No, the reality is for me to just go away from striking with Miocic would be a huge mistake. Because I've shown over the majority of the fight that I can outstrike him. So I'm not going to abandon all my stand-up, but I do want to make wrestling a focus. Am I going to be as wrestling heavy as Curtis Blades was? No. I'm not going to just be charging at him trying to take him down. I'm going to be using my stand-up to set up my takedowns. And if the takedowns show themselves, I'll get them. But if not, I'm more than confident in my ability to box and kickbox this guy. I think the reason the fourth round became so easy him to land those body shots is because I was tired. I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was just boxing him. I wasn't kickboxing anymore, right? I wasn't kicking. I wasn't kneeing. I was just straight up boxing. And I'm not going to be doing it this time.
Yeah. Now, I know when Khabib was in San Jose getting ready, you guys had kind of shut down the gym and were pretty much just focusing on him. And I know California has started to open up again. But in terms of your training camp, like, how are you doing your training camp this time? Because obviously, just like Khabib, this is a huge fight for you. So is it kind of the same thing where you guys are kind of shutting things down and just focusing on yourself? Or how is that working?
So I go to AKA on Monday, Wednesday, Friday for sparring. And we just try to keep the gym separate, right? So if there's other guys in the gym, which are very few, we just kind of stay in different rooms. We try not to be just all over each other. Little guys are in one room, heavier guys in the other, and most of the heavier guys I use for my training. But then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Friday and Saturday, I train at home. I built a gym inside my garage. I got a sauna in my backyard, cold plunge. I have a hyperbaric chamber now. I have a cage. I have heavy bags, aerodynes, cardio equipment. I've got everything I need to supplement my training on those days that I don't go to the gym.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one aspect of this fight that I haven't really talked to you. I know I haven't talked to you much about it. When I talked to Stipe before the rematch, I went to Cleveland and I interviewed him and I asked him. I said, there was a talk about some eye pokes in the first fight. And when I asked him, he said, next question. Didn't want to address it. Didn't want to talk about it. And then after the fight the second time, obviously we know he had the eye surgery, and that's been a big part of the delay in this fight. So I'll ask you, DC, because I know you've never been a dirty fighter. You've never been that way. And you've fought guys who have eye poked you in fights. Obviously we mentioned, John Jones, unfortunately, that's been one of his, one of the things that kind of hurt him or haunted him throughout his career, the eye poke. So I'll ask you, what do you make of the eye pokes? Has it been as egregious as it's been made out to be? Do you believe it's just been the accident? Like, what do you make of that? Because, again, he did have that retina surgery after the second fight.
I'm not purposely doing that. I'm not purposely poking him in the eye. So that first fight, I kind of poked him in the eye, but the issue with that was sometimes when I spar, and because I'm shorter, I have the 16-ounce gloves. And I can kind of flick my hand towards guys and hit them when they're a little bit out of range. And I think that's what happened the first time. The second time, once I think my knuckle got jammed into his eye, but that's not a finger. I kind of punched, and the thumb was tucked into a fist, but like the knuckle got him in the eye, and I don't even know. Like I'm not trying to poke the guy in the eye. Like that's fucking stupid. Like why would I ever do that? I don't wish long-term damage to this guy's eye. Like I don't wish that the guy can't see out of his freaking eye. Like that's crazy. One of my friends and coworkers, Michael Bisping, deals with that. Like I don't want to see another guy have to deal with that. It's crazy. Like I don't know. Like I'm not trying to poke this guy in the eye. Like we're wearing these little gloves and we train with 16-ounce gloves. So sometimes you do things that you may have done with the 16-ounce gloves that you can't do with the 4-ounce gloves.
Yeah. Well,
I don't purposely try to poke this guy in the face.
Yeah, there's a certain inherent danger that comes along with fighting with open finger gloves, isn't there? Now I'm not making excuses, but that's just part of it. You can do that in grappling too. I've done that in grappling, and obviously I'm not a UFC fighter, but I've gotten a thumb in the eye.
And I've gotten thumbed in the eye by Stipe before. It's not like he's never thumbed me in the eye. He's hit me in the eye. He's stuck me in the eye before. Whatever.
Yeah. Now you've in the first fight again you knocked him out. Second fight again you were dominating on the feet, and then what happened in the fourth round? What is the ideal outcome in this fight? Is there an ideal outcome for this fight?
Just win. I'd love to win the fight over an extended period of time and show that without a shadow of a doubt I'm better. And show, my cardio failed me last time. There were a lot of factors why. No excuses, though. He took a beating. He stayed in the fight, and he got the job done. I respect that. I respect that he was able to do and stand up to some of the stuff that I hit him with. But the reality is I'd like to show that cardio is no issue. It never has been. All of a sudden it is now. Like, I want to show that I've prepared myself, and with the ability to prepare as I always have, that if it's 25 minutes, it's 25 minutes. If it's 10, it's 10. It just doesn't matter. I win the fight.
Yeah. Now, I know you said, the focus is the fight. The focus isn't necessarily the retirement that's going to come afterwards. But when you said originally when you wanted to retire, and obviously the timeline shifted, but you said this is your last fight, that's going to be it. And I think everyone believes you, DC. I believe you. You've got other things going on. I know your focus. I know your family. When you say I'm going to retire, I believe you. But I don't believe it when almost anybody else says it. Alexander Gustafsson said it. He's coming back as a heavyweight. Chuck Liddell said it. And then, years later he comes back and fight. What is it? In your belief, DC, you're a smart guy. Why is it that so many people can't set that date and actually walk away and be done with it?
Because once they're done, they're done. They go from the game, that rush, right? That being a part of the show is gone. And then what? They go to the gym and they train and they feel like, oh man, I can still go with these dudes. But there's nothing to fill that gap, right? That big gap, that training camp gap, that gap of preparing for something, that's gone. And so what do? Your mind starts to race. I think that for me, I've got so many things that I can do outside of the fight that will allow me to fill those gaps. I figure I'll coach at AKA. I'll still coach my wrestling teams. My son is wrestling. My daughter in her gymnastics. I got another baby coming. I just think I have things to fill the gaps.
Yeah.
So prepare for it,
And you
prepare for my show.
And you
prepare for my show on Mondays. Prepare for my show on Monday. Prepare for the calling the fights. Calling the fights will allow me to still be a part of the show. Most guys don't have that.
Yeah. And you said, you told me before when I asked you this question, you're going to miss it. You're absolutely going to miss it.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to miss the competition. I live for competition. I may be the most competitive guy on the roster, but, man, it has to stop for everyone. Nobody has the ability to just train and fight forever. And I know it, Damon, because I can feel it in my preparation now. And people go, well, what if they give you all this money for this? I'm like, man, if I had to prepare like I'm preparing right now, to do that at my age for a sustained period of time would be very difficult. At 36, 37, they could call me 5 weeks before a fight and go, are you ready? I'm like, not now, but I guarantee I will be in 3 weeks. And I would go do it. I don't have that luxury anymore. I need 12 weeks to get myself to where I can do what I need to do to win a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, like I said, there is a unfortunately, we're in a sport where we see so few guys walk away on top. I imagine that means a lot to you to walk out as champion, to leave as heavyweight champion, to be one of, two people, George St. Pierre being the other one, to actually leave with a belt. Yeah,
that'll be amazing. I think everybody wants to have what GSP did, and nobody does, because everybody kind of grasps. You watch guys that have, even my man Mike Swick, right? My man Mike Swick came back from all those surgeries, and he knocked some guy out on Fox. Do you remember that?
I do.
And it could have been it would have been it, but then he kept going. I think that fight was supposed to be his last fight, and he came back. He was like, I just want to do it one more time. And he did it. And he won, and it was perfect. And then he came back again, to try to do it again. And then he fought again, and he lost twice. And he was like, okay, I'm done. But it's that could have been it, it would have been it, and it would have been perfect. Dude that fucking pulled himself off the ground, all those stomach issues and everything, and he had came back and he had won. But decided to keep fighting. And I think that's how most people think. You go out and you fight and you do some spectacular shit, and all of a sudden you're like, man, if I can still do it like I used to. But the reality is that's not the case. I think every great champion can do something for one night. But can a great champion do it for a sustained period of time when they're at an advanced age? I don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I believe when you say you're going to walk away, you're going to walk away, and I know it's going to be a big moment for you on August 15th. I was at your last wrestling match. I remember that leaving the shoes on the mat, and I assume this one will be leaving the gloves in the cage.
To do it like a wrestling match where you take off your shoes would be fantastic. I just think that the lasting image of me is going to be getting that belt wrapped around my waist one last time, and I believe that will be the memory that you want to leave with everyone. You know, there's a lot of pictures of me getting belts wrapped around my waist, and I just want it to happen one more time.
Yeah,
against a tough guy, a very tough guy.
Yeah, and I know you've said it. When you walk away, you leave the heavyweight title behind. You hope Stipe is still involved in the next title fight, and I think that says a lot about what Stipe, what he means to this division. Is even after you beat him, you still believe he's the next guy in line.
I do believe that regardless of what happens after I'm done, it should be somebody versus Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight championship. I don't know who it's going to be. It's probably Francis Ngannou. But Stipe should be involved in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. DC, before I let you go, I know you're in camp, so you're probably not doing much TV watching right now. I know we talked about Better Call Saul. Have you, one show I never mentioned to you, have you ever watched The Boys on Amazon?
I haven't watched The Boys. Somebody else told me to watch it, but it was so gory. I watched the first episode, and I was like, man, this is really gory.
Dude, you gotta watch it. I promise you. It's gory. It's gory, but you gotta watch it. I promise you will love it.
It's the superheroes that kind of just do whatever the fuck they want, right?
Yeah, like they're basically just like they're off the chain, like they're completely like no morality whatsoever, like the anti-Superman. But it's hilarious. It is a great show. Like I know your shows. I'm telling you, you'll love that show.
I'm gonna start it today. You've never led me down the wrong path.
I promise you. I was watching a promo for it today, and I thought about it before I called you. I was like, if there's one guy I know will like this show, it does get crazy. I promise you, but it's a great show.
I'm going to check it out then.
DC, it is always a pleasure, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time. Have a safe training camp. Have a good training camp. And I'm sure we will chat after the fight.
All right, my brother. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.